Hello and welcome to Fierce. This program celebrates the diversity of LGBTIQ identities and perspectives. Fierce is produced in Bundjalung Country at 2NCR Lismore and can also be heard on podcast at fiercefm.podbean.com and in New Zealand on Fresh FM, as well as all over Australia through the Community Radio Network. This is Peter Lena, and I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands where you are listening. They took care of these lands sustainably for hundreds of thousands of years and then shared this land with us at great cost to their own lives. I want to honour and thank them for the work they have done and continue to do to care for country and to sit on the earth. I also want to thank the fairies and crones who came before us in history to fight for our human rights, to love fiercely. Fierce. Glitta Supernova, who actually initiated burlesque in Australia.
Yes, first burlesque club in the Southern Hemisphere back in 2000. We didn't even know it was burlesque then. We were just thinking it was a strip club that ended up becoming known as burlesque.
How did you get on that creative edge to do the very first thing like that in the Southern Hemisphere?
So me and Sex Intent had this idea in a hammock in Mexico at the time when the divine inspiration hit us, and why don't we do a strip club for women? We came back to Australia and just did it.
And back in those days, were you inspired being in Mexico?
Back in those days, there was no internet. We were just taking it, the divine inspiration really from the universe. So we didn't really know what was really happening around the world. We hadn't really travelled too much at that point, and I hadn't been to a strip club for women only. And so, yeah, it was sort of just an idea.
You grew up in Lennox Head, which is actually in the Northern Rivers, where this radio show is produced.
Back then, Lennox Head was like a very sleepy little coastal village, and all surrounded in bush, wasn't subdivided, and it was quite a nice little peaceful place. And so sort of hippies and bogans coexisting together at that place, you know. And they hadn't even unearthed the Aboriginal buller ring. At that point, it was still in the bush. My mum and dad were both hippies. We had a cafe in Byron Bay then called the Rib Cage, and it was a water tank cut in half on its side, and then that was it. And then there was these really hardcore hippies, and they were dancing in Hessian sacks. And I was staring at them. It's like imprinted in my mind. I think it's even one of my earliest memories, watching them all sort of do their freedom of expression dancing.
And so you left Lennox pretty early in your life to head down to Sydney.
At the age of 17, and fell into the queer underground scene, Wicked Women and the rap parties.
Wow.
I fell across a bunch of young freaks, would hit the clubs and pretty much just club kids doing the do, as you do when you're young.
Were you on Oxford Street doing patches?
It was just a blur of ecstasy and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, it wasn't patches. It was definitely the next incarnation of patches, which was, I think, BCM in the very early days. But it was all like the Exchange Hotel and Taxi Club, special events like Wicked Women, and sort of seeing underground sort of sex performance, like the sex subculture parties, and it was all pretty wild in the 90s in Sydney.
Did you know Groovy Biscuit?
Yes, we were all doing that club kid thing together and exploring weird different performances and sort of collaborators and working alongside of each other, you know, many years.
Well, I was there in the audience watching you guys, loving it. You're incredible.
So you know the vibe.
And I was so in love with Luca.
Oh, yes, Luca. Yeah, we always thought he was the, what do we call him, the flapjack. He was always with the lesbians, and he was almost a lesbian himself, but not.
That's right.
He looked like one, that's for sure.
Yeah. So fast forward through all of that, and now you're a big star, winning awards over in New Zealand and internationally as a cabaret artist, putting on shows, producing works. That's pretty amazing what you've achieved and what you're doing now. Do you still see the club kids?
I just find it's very interesting how life unfolds and all those things that weren't valued in those days, you know, putting on nightclubs and performing in the queer underground, and to get led along on a journey that unfolds itself. Gone on to creating big shows and one-woman shows and touring the world with that. But now I find myself with my partner, and we're in a little town called Yamana Beach on the Central Coast, and we've been here for the past 8 years. And we have just the last 2 years set up a not-for-profit arts and culture organisation called the Noodle Fun Haus, creating a more welcoming and inclusive Central Coast community, and pretty much doing what we're doing in Sydney, you know, having these wild little cabaret nights and sort of showcasing different amazing artists from around the country and the underground and fringe and counterculture. From that, we created the Coastal Twist Festival. Did you hear about that?
I sure did.
So that was the first LGBTIQ arts and culture festival or any visibility celebration on the Central Coast.
Throughout the years, I've heard of a gay disco that happens and also a Pride event that happens every year down there in Central Coast.
There hasn't been any Pride events, but there has been like more discos, social group meetings and stuff like that. The area itself has an underbelly of conservatism and old kind of religious beliefs. There is no support network for these communities. There was little social groups happening. It was all sort of private parties. Now with Central Coast Pride and the Coastal Twist Festival, we're able to kind of unite and celebrate difference in our community. People now on the Central Coast are totally aware that we're here and we're queer and we live here. So our general community is a lot more open-minded than we gave it credit for, and our allies are really strong here. It's been really amazing and heart-opening, and we're having to fight through major blockers who are very threatened, denying that it even exists here. Doing that in an area outside of a gay ghetto is really political, you know, and it actually does change the culture. I think that's the most amazing thing about it, really.
Is there any particular tips for people who are doing this edgy work to have a success like you've had? Because we're in the age of the Pentecostal PM and going to do the religious discrimination bill so that people of colour and people with disabilities and women and LGBTIQ people are going to be facing discrimination in big ways again.
Oh, man, I know. It's absolutely nuts, all that. And it's totally scary. But I feel like, you know, you just got to keep doing the good fight. I think the success that we've had with the Coastal Twist Festival was making it inclusive of everyone, you know, young mums with their kids going, I just wanted to bring my kid down here because I want them to see what is really reflected in society. I don't want them to live in a bubble. I want them to see all types of people. I feel like you've got to broaden that sense of what a community is and include everyone to that change to happen. They champion it for you, and that's what they want as well. But also, we've had these major blockers, but we keep knocking on their door. We don't get reactive, you know. We keep trying to educate them, saying, yeah, we're here. You change your mind. Oh, you want to come along to this event? Check it out. It's not so scary. You know, just keep at them. And some of our biggest blockers, just from keep showing up and humanising yourself as a real human being, have actually turned around and become not only amazing supporters, but champion the cause. It's about just continual resilience and just having to keep at it, you know, just keep it going.
Well, back in the day when you were a club kid doing the freak shows, there was LG for the visibility.
Oh, yeah, right,
they were bringing in the L, and then they wanted to bring in the B and the T. But there were so many people saying, no, we just got to stay gay. We don't want anything. And then there was a lesbian saying, no, we just got to stay gay and lesbian because the lesbians need to be seen and they'll be invisible again if we bring in the B and the T.
Yeah.
And then we've seen the community and the Sydney Mardi Gras organisation become quite mainstream. Mm-hmm. Do you find that you might become a bit more mainstream with your sex clown work to try and appease and to invite those blockers?
I would never appease creatively. I really believe in art that challenges, that has points of view that are interesting. As creative director of the Coastal Twist Festival, that's in my mind. I'm really not into a bland, whitewashed version of entertainment. I love creative anarchy, and we are shining the light on inclusion of different cultures, abilities, genders, sexuality. Like, we really try and keep an amazing broad mix of the human soup.
Well, thank Christ for that.
Yeah. People said, wow, this festival is so diverse, and thank you so much. thank you for not forgetting the lesbians, and thank you for including Aboriginal people.
So you've been a big part of the communities in Sydney and now up in the Central Coast. Can you tell me any differences between those two communities?
But there's so much difference in these two communities. And in fact, when we first moved here from Sydney, I must admit I was pretty burnt out. I've been touring the world with my one-woman shows, and I was continued to do that and come back. But after living here 3 or 4 years, me and my partner were just like, oh my God, like something has to be done here because there's so much people still living in the closet. It's like really full on, like I said, the power structures, the lack of support and infrastructure, and even in health and support for LGBTIQ people. But in a city, everyone's really tight. It's like there's lots of little communities, but you kind of know them all, and it's like this. But in the country, like in the Central Coast here, there's lots of little pockets of people, but we're all isolated within that. And then I got really surprised knowing these really outrageous, flamboyant queens, but they're not out at work and, things like that. So I was just like, wow, it's really different here. And politically, by doing this, it's causing much more of a stir than I have ever caused in Sydney. You know what I mean? Like, wow. I'm having to have these amazing big meetings with these huge businessmen. I would never have this access in the city to make such amazing change. It's been a huge learning curve for me. And also being so ghettoed, I had to expand my idea of what is a community. We had to collaborate with all these different community groups. Like also because of the homophobia and people being in the closet, there's so much damage and pain and healing that needs to be done from being so isolated. So I'm hoping things like this help bring in more services and support groups for people. So we have people calling us up. So I've been assaulted and I went to the police station, and when they asked me my real gender, I was a trans woman, I kept telling them my name. They go, no, your real name. And she left without reporting the crime of domestic violence. And then we have other people going, I'm being attacked by my neighbours for being a lesbian, and my kids are getting abused every day. So these are the issues happening. Because we've just become visible as Central Coast Pride, they come to us, because there is no other infrastructure.
So a lot of your work is feminist and sex-based, as far as, you've been known for showing your chubby vagina around.
Put it so politely.
Tell me, what's that like for the more conservative audiences?
What opened the door to this whole thing that I'm doing now is that before I was just touring Australia and the world in more rural areas doing that show with my chubby vagina, and it actually showed me that people are a lot more progressed than I actually thought they were, in the world, because it's not about the chubby vagina, but behind the chubby vagina is all these messages about how society is and how the control systems of our bodies are, and they bypass that and they tap into the real messaging. So I became less afraid of expressing myself outside of the city because it showed me, and also because I won awards for these shows and stuff at different fringe festivals and stuff, it actually showed me the culture is ready. It's not this little backroom sort of thing anymore. The culture's seeing porn that's not empowered. They're seeing negative images of women. So to see a woman in control of her body with the messages and the strength behind it, I don't think people are that scared anymore. Like, of course, everyone's going to get shocked, but in Sydney they get shocked as well. So it's not going to, I think people in general now are a lot more open-minded and intelligent, and you shouldn't underestimate your audiences ever.
Is Glitta Supernova a character, or is that just how you live your life?
That's me. And when I'm on the stage, it's usually just me with a wig on and less clothes than I have in the supermarket or something. More nude. So yeah, it's my name, it's on my passport, and it's a name that was given to me by the universe, and it's kind of, that's it.
Any tips for young performers?
I think right now the most amazing asset you could ever have is true originality, because everything is so researched and referenced and everything like that. So I'd recommend people tapping into their amazingness that's inside of them, because each person is an amazing, unique expression. So I reckon get in touch with your own essence and not trying to emulate anyone.
Glitta, you're super fierce. We love you. Have fun.
Oh, thank you, darling. Thanks for having me. Nice to chew the fat with you.
How can listeners find you and come and see your shows?
You can see what's happening on the Naughty Noodle website, which is naughtynoodle.com.au.
You're listening to Fierce.
Vanessa Larry Mitchell, the comedian from Larry Laughs Loud, and Fernando, who can hear the drums and also is a newbie comedian who did Mandy Nolan's course recently and now is hitting the stage in Lismore for queer comedy. Welcome to Fierce.
Hello.
I'm excited to talk to you both, and I'm really inquisitive about what's it like being a comedian in the Northern Rivers.
It's the best. I started the comedy club about 2 years ago because locally we didn't have much access to stage time without going southeast Queensland or up to Brisbane. And it's absolutely boomed. So we've got a whole bunch of really strong performers in the region now, and the community support is just growing and growing. The reason that we've put queer comedy together, everybody who knows Lismore knows how diverse we are here and how everybody just embraces it. But I know, there's some venues where people who identify as LGBTQI still get a little bit nervous about doing some of their content on stage. So the idea of this show is to not only just celebrate diversity, but also to give people a really safe and inclusive space to share their jokes. And Nando's new to the stage, but he's got the knack and the stage presence.
So Fernando, when did you know you were funny?
Well, I'm not. I met Vanessa about a year ago. I moved up for a sea change from Sydney to the North Coast. I've immersed myself in the comedy scene and met some great people. It's such a great scene up here, so supportive, and it's thriving. And I discovered that, and I'm doing a radio program on Bay FM, and I thought it'd be great to showcase the local comedy scene. And over time, I've just got the courage to try it myself. Vanessa's been so supportive and wonderful, and they've all done Mandy's course, and I thought, I'll do it as well. And started doing it, and I'm loving it. It's so supportive, and look, I've always been a bit of a class clown, but I never had the courage to actually stand on stage and try to make people laugh. And I thought, it's never too late, and I'm loving it.
Oh, beautiful. And so, Vanessa, what is funny?
I think honesty is really funny. I know growing up as a female, there's this whole kind of social rules about fitting within certain boxes. But I think as soon as you break that mold and just be your absolute truest self, the audiences love that. They really appreciate you going to places that other people won't talk about. I talk a lot about sex or dating, periods, those kind of things that often people don't publicly talk about. And I think that's why Nando's material works really well as well, is because it's all about himself. Yeah, just share things on stage that possibly would have been your otherwise biggest secrets. We share them to the world. Some performers will do observational stuff, which always works really well. But I think, people have to really find their inner self and be as pure as they can. And that's what really sells.
So, Fernando, you just turned 50. You're living up here in the Northern Rivers. Well done. Good decision. And so you've found the community, not just, I guess, the LGBTIQ community up here, but also the comedian community up here.
Yeah, look, living the dream, Peter. Loving it.
What do you admire about comedians?
I admire their bravery, and it's funny because I've just come back from Christmas in Sydney with the family down there, and I did some shows down there and invited all my old friends, including some work friends. Oh, my God, and they all came out. And all of them have said, how brave it is. I could never do that. La, 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 la. That's how I used to feel and think about getting up in front of a crowd. And I guess it shows that I turned a corner in that sense. When you first go up, there's a lot of butterflies, a lot of fear, but you get the first laugh under your belt, and then you start to feel good and connect with the audience. And I'm loving that.
You've got such a beautiful voice, Fernando, for radio. And I know you've got your own program. Why don't you ask Vanessa a question for us?
Vanessa's really at the cutting edge, and she's on the verge of stardom. What are you doing to get to that next level in terms of kind of opening up doors, Vanessa? I know you've just been to Sydney? You're doing more in Brisbane.
I'm obsessed with comedy. You know, I'm obsessed. I live it. I breathe it. That's all I think about. And so there's a part of me that kind of wants to keep hustling and, you know, begging people to put me on, because it's really hard for people to believe that you're funny until they've been to a show. Marty Bright down in Sydney, and he basically said, just let it happen now. So, you know, things will happen. But for me, it's more about continually working on material, lots of Tinder dating to try and get some more jokes out. They just write themselves, Tinder. I don't know what the end goal is for me. It's just all part of the journey.
Because at the end of the day, Peter, most of the comedians up here have got another job, another life. It's very hard to make a living from it unless you make the big time down in Sydney and Melbourne. Is that where you have to end up to be able to make money out of this, Vanessa? Because, I mean, Mandy Nolan and Ellen Briggs are probably the only ones making money up here.
What happens with a lot of comedians, though, is that they'll branch off into lots of side hustles. I met quite a few performers down in Sydney who, while they're doing comedy fairly regularly, they're also writing for TV shows or doing regular radio programs and things like that. Any opportunity where you can sit around laughing with people, or, you know, in a room full of people that are all laughing, I don't care where it takes me, as long as we're all laughing.
So emceeing events and cruise ships, I noticed a lot of comedians end up doing that because there's money there.
You have to have 30 minutes of clean material, though, to do cruise ships, and I'm not quite
that
clean
rules
enough.
us out.
Yeah, PG. No, thanks. Not interested.
Oh, boring.
Oh. So it sounds like there's 3 H's to comedy. There's honesty, there's hustling, and also hecklers. So what do you do with hecklers?
Yes. I went and watched Jim Owen on Friday night in Ballina, and then Saturday night I went and watched Judith Lucy, and both were incredible. Just watching how well they acknowledge the heckler but shut them down straight away. There's nothing worse than when a performer engages with a heckler and actually makes it worse, and then the whole show it gets ruined because nobody's there to listen to a heckler who's, you know, some loser that's trying to join in the wrong way. Most people are pretty good, particularly with our open mic shows around here. If I'm emceeing it, I'll usually announce straight away, you know, please don't heckle, because a lot of our newer performers, it really rattles them when they've worked so hard to work on their 5-minute piece. And then if somebody, you know, yells something out, it can really throw the whole night for one of the newbies. I can be a bit dominant and pull people up pretty quickly if I need to.
With that last question about Queer Festival and Vanessa's line about it being a safe space, that's one of the things I love about it. Getting up and performing, I mean, that was one of my biggest fears was having to be myself on stage, and that fear was mainly around not feeling accepted or that people are judging you. And I certainly felt that my first couple of shows, and people were great, but that's where that fear comes from, you know, not feeling accepted and loved for who you are. So the great thing about this Queer Festival is that I don't think I'll have any of those fears, and I'll be able to actually push the boundaries, go further, because I had to clean my act up a little bit for a broad audience, because I thought, that might be too much detail. Now I won't care because they're all with me, they'll all get it, and I can actually push the envelope a bit further.
Well, can you give us a joke now?
No. It often doesn't work like that. A lot of people say that in pubs and stuff. Oh, can you tell us a joke? They're not like the 3 blokes walked into a bar kind of jokes. Right. You could do a quick imitation of your mum, Nando. That always goes down well.
Well, a lot of my act, Peter and listener, is about growing up gay and WOG in Australia, and how, you know, that wasn't an easy road at times, particularly with a really traditional family that I came from, Catholic family. And it took my mum about 10 years to get used to me being gay. She always used to ask, when are you going to bring a girlfriend home? And I'd say, Mum, I'm a homosexual. And she'd say, shh, no speak like this. Don't tell anybody. But now, you know, Mum's pretty cool now, and, you know, we're really great friends. And she's got an old Italian boyfriend now since my dad died, and they're really hitting it off. And he really endeared himself to me when she introduced me to him a couple of months ago. Mum obviously did some work on the 79-year-old, because he said to me, thinking that he's going to win my heart over, and he did, he said, Fernando, me doesn't matter, you poofta.
No.
And he was actually serious and trying to win me over. And it was beautiful, and I've loved him ever since.
Oh, shut up in your face.
Exactly. True story.
Beautiful stories, and I can totally relate to them because my family's English convicts and German Swiss, but I had the same mother. She'd say, don't tell anybody, and, you know, I was the worst nightmare, and it took her ages to accept me being gay. And I wasn't allowed to tell my father, and then a year later, she eventually told Dad, and Dad just called me and said, I love you no matter what. I don't understand you, but I love you no matter what. Yeah. And so he was much better than my mum. But my brother, this is funny, my brother is a misogynist, racist pig today, and he wasn't as bad back when I was in my 20s, but he said to me, Peter, I'm going to kidnap you, tie you up, and force you to watch the footy. And I was just like, oh, John, I'd love you to tie me up and then force me to watch football short carrying people, you know. But I never watched the footy. I wasn't into the footy, but that was a funny story. Vanessa, you're on Tinder. What are you on, Fernando?
Oh, what are you on, Nando?
Oh, I don't really. Now and then I have a look, but yeah, I'm kind of over all of that, I reckon. Yeah, I'll go on Grindr sometimes, and there's another one called Scruff, but very rarely, to be honest. I reckon I've had enough promiscuous sex to last me 10 lifetimes. And if
Shut your mouth.
Comes along, then then he comes along. So yeah, no, I'm not really in that space. I'm a whole person with different parts to me. You know, I had my family, my migrant family, I had school friends, I had uni friends, I had work friends, and then I had gay friends as well. I never exclusively just centered around one group of friends. I always found that really limiting. So I was never, hugely in the scene. I'd go out and I'd take friends when I wanted a good dance or a good laugh or whatever. And it's the same up here, really. Look, I've met some gay friends, but there is a difference in terms of people being more welcoming and friendly, and they're not as judgy in general. It's beautiful. We are the future.
We are. Vanessa, do you want to give it a quick plug?
So it's queer comedy, and it's happening at the Northern Rivers Hotel in Lismore, out the back in the courtyard. Free entry. We recommend 18 plus because I'm pretty sure it'll get a bit filthy, but it'll be fabulous.
Filthy and gorgeous. And Fernando, do you want to plug your radio show?
Yes, so it's a weekly breakfast program on Bay FM, and I've actually got a comedy hour between 7 and 8 every Wednesday morning. I go out and record a lot of gigs, and I do interviews with a lot of up-and-coming but also visiting comedians, and I play all of that, and it all goes on our website. The program is called Above the Fray, Wednesday morning breakfast.
Thank you, Fernando. Thank you, Vanessa. Stay fierce.
No worries. Thanks heaps, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Fierce. This program celebrates the diversity of LGBTIQ identities and perspectives. Fierce is produced in Bundjalung Country at 2NCR Lismore and can also be heard on podcast at fiercefm.podbean.com and in New Zealand on Fresh FM, as well as all over Australia through the Community Radio Network.